As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. Do you tend to think of narcissistic individuals as having a really strong moral compass? No. In fact, if anything, that's one of the things that happens. It's a natural byproduct of narcissism. They have a lack of that moral compass. When we talk about having healthy morality, we're talking about having a core belief in values and standards and principles relative to what is right and what is wrong. And then when we talk about having a compass, we're talking about being focused on a particular direction, and it points us to where we're going. Narcissists don't have a sense of morality, and they don't have that sense of that compass, that sense of direction that's going to be consistent with where you and I are. These are individuals who tend to be bankrupt in that category, and the further they go down the spectrum of narcissism, the more you're going to see evidences of that. Keep in mind that when we're talking about narcissism itself, down at the very basis of it, is a set of circumstances that does not lend itself to strong morality. We're talking about individuals who are highly selfish. In fact, they're completely enamored with themselves that they don't really tune into other individuals. That's that lack of empathy that we talk about. These are people that are willing to exploit and manipulate. Truth is expedient as far as they're concerned. They must be in the superior position. They have to be in control. And all of that lends itself to very much a me focused, where the sense of us does not really come into play. And that's where the morality becomes lost. Now, I want to zero in on 5 primary ingredients, 5 primary signs that show that narcissists have indeed lost that sense of the moral compass. And it's going to be very important for you to recognize these because, of course, whenever you call them out on this or whenever there are difficulties because of it, they're going to turn around and say, well, this must mean you're the problem. But the more you're able to see into the narcissist's mannerisms, their priorities, and their reasoning, then the less inclined you're going to be to go along with whatever gaslighting efforts they throw in your direction. Now, the first thing that I'm going to mention that tells us that an individual has lost their moral compass is that they can be friendly, they can be cooperative on an as-needed basis. Narcissists are constant schemers. They're trying to figure out, okay, what do I have to do to get you onto my team so that I can get whatever it is that I want? And so part of the plan may be, well, if I can be friendly, if I can show you that I'm interested in you and I can be funny and tell good stories and be helpful, then along the way, you're going to come along with me and I'm going to be able to get whatever it is I want. Now, it's important to realize that beneath that veneer of friendliness is a simmering resentment. Narcissists are sitting on lots of anger as evidenced by their easy frustration or impatience or annoyance and irritability that's just right there, one step away from you from showing up. They consider your boundaries to be a nuisance. They consider your needs to be a nuisance that aggravates them. But they realize that they have a better chance of doing their thing if they can give you the impression that they really are much more into you than they actually are. So their friendliness it's a tool. It's a manipulation scheme. A second sign that these people have lost their moral compass is they're quite willing to use and exploit other individuals. You've heard the old thing about, people are interested in money, sex, and power. Well, narcissists are heavily into that. It's like, well, in those categories, money, sex, and power, what can you do to help me out in those categories? How can you get me to where I want to go in those things and others? And then you'll notice that when narcissists come along and they use you up, and they gain whatever positives they may think they're going to get from a relationship with you, they're quite willing to move on to the next person. That typically what they'll do is they'll invent a reason why they don't need to be with you. You disappointed me, or you're not the person I thought you were going to be. But they do not have commitments. They can give the impression that they do, but their commitment is to themselves, and you are a useful idiot in their world, and they'll continue using you up until they're done, and then they move on. Now, there's a third sign that says they've lost their moral compass, and this comes as no shock, and that is they're constantly playing games with the truth. Now, they can be overt liars. They can, in fact, an illustration comes to mind. There's a guy that I talked with who had an extramarital affair, and the question was, how are you going to manage, telling your adult children about, what you've done and what's been going on? And he just point blank said, well, I'm just going to lie, because they don't need to know what's going on in my life. It's like, okay, in the affair you were dishonest and covering everything up, and so now that you're trying to recover from the affair, which is why he was talking with me, we're going to continue on with that. And then the concept didn't even cross that guy's mind to say, yeah, no, that's what I need to do, because that's just so built into the equation. They can use overt lying. They can be dishonest by omission. They can offer partial truths. They can say, well, I was over here at this place, when in fact they actually were, until they went over to this other place and did all the sneaky stuff. They don't tell you that part. They can keep secrets. They can offer up revisionist history. They'll talk about things that happened, and they leave out ingredients, or they embellish thoughts, or they just forget kind of certain things. They can imply that they agree with you, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and you move on thinking we have a sense of coordination, when in fact, no, I didn't say I was going to coordinate with you. I just said it was a good idea. They play games with the truth. Truth is just a commodity that comes and goes just based on whatever their whim is. A fourth sign that they've lost their moral compass is that these individuals become expert at rationalizing their own selfishness. For example, if you call someone out for having that bad temper that they might have, and they've raged and all of that, then they might say something like, well, I didn't sleep real well last night. Or they may say something like, oh, you want to talk to me about my temper? How many times have you told me stories about how your dad had a temper that was a whole lot worse? I mean, what I do is minuscule compared to people like that. And they can rationalize things like that. Or if they're just being irresponsible, they may say something like, well, how many times a day do you make mistakes? I mean, come on, get off my back, will you? And so whenever you try to confront them about whatever's going on in their lack of moral compass, then they've got some sort of explanation, they have some sort of justification, and they try to constantly get them off the hook. Accountability doesn't work with them. And then we can see that this is summarized by the fifth sign, and that is basically these people have no remorse after they've mistreated other individuals. If somebody has suffered because of their poor behaviors, then that narcissistic person can think, they had it coming to them anyway. They were going to go down the tubes with or without me, and so they don't really care. Or they may say something like, well, you've forgotten all the good that I've done, and you can't blame me for all the problems. And then ultimately, just I don't really care what goes on with other individuals, because you see, it's all about me. So when we talk about narcissism, we're talking about people who have lost their way when it comes to core values. And they don't have that sense of direction, because the only direction they have is what's in it for me. And ultimately then, their words or their seeming agreements with you are ultimately meaningless. And that's a very sad way to live. So your question is, well, how should you respond? And my reaction to that is, well, base your plans with that person, not on what that individual says, but basically, what does the broad body of evidence say about that individual? And then, rather than seeking agreements with that person as much as you can, you want to try to do that, but we're talking about making agreements with known liars. Instead, when it's necessary, just go ahead and set your consistent boundaries and establish your stipulations and consequences. And if they fit, great. If not, you've got your boundaries, you have your consequences, and don't even try to get them to go along with it, because they'll tell you they will and then they won't. And then ultimately, as you engage with that person, plan in their irresponsibility. Factor that in as you make steps to go forward, rather than thinking, well, I hope this works out well, or I hope that this time it's going to be different. It won't be. Follow your initiatives, knowing that you're dealing with somebody who's not going to be reliable. And then, of course, that being the case, it leaves you questioning, well, why in the world then do I need to have any kind of close relationship with someone who has no sense of integrity? And so pull back as much as is necessary. Sometimes these people just don't need to be in your life at all. And if that's the case, I get it. Now, you're going to come along and you're going to say, as far as my life is concerned, integrity and reliability is central. The narcissist would say to that, me too, I agree with that, until they don't. Because you see, it's all about smoke and mirrors. They're going to try to give you the impression that they're there when they're not. Narcissists' self-absorption trumps their morality. Whereas with healthy individual, your sense of morality trumps your self-absorption. You understand the difference there? So ultimately, narcissists are going to be polar opposites with core decency and consistency. Factor that in, know what you're dealing with, and then move forward with that truth in mind. I hope that videos such as this can give you some good awareness of what you're dealing with. It's sad that we have to think all these things through, but again, whenever there's problems with these people, they're going to just point the finger straight at you and say, well, if there's a problem, it's you. No, I see it, I get it. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so, and we're going to keep more videos coming toward you so that you can have a greater awareness of what you might be dealing with. In addition, I know that when you're dealing with people like this, you know that I stand for counseling. I'm retired from my counseling practice, but I'm sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com, and I refer to them on a routine basis because I believe in what they do, and the process is a very workable process. They're an online counseling resources. The link is below. It can be so helpful for you to think, who do I talk to? How am I going to work my way through it? And then you can find somebody that can say, well, I'd like to know you. I'd like to understand your backstory. Let's plan together how you can have your own healthiness. That's why I refer to the people at BetterHelp.com. So if the need is there, go ahead and click through the link and get the help and the therapy that you need. In addition, I put together courses, and these are of a very extensive nature. I put a lot of work into these courses. They take a lot of work from you, but it's a guided way for you to work through various kinds of issues. We have Ready, Set, Connect about having healthy connection skills with people. This is me about establishing your boundaries, Free to Be, finding yourself despite the controllers. We have more courses that are going to be on the way. Also on my website, we have my webinars that I presented, and they're different from the courses. They're 90-minute presentations, and then we have access to my podcast, articles, and my books, etc. Okay, when you're dealing with somebody who has strong narcissism, you're dealing with someone who has lost their moral compass. Know that, and rather than thinking, well, if I can say the right things and everything's going to be different, it won't. They are what they are. What can be different is you. And you can decide, well, I'm going to make my adjustments according to what I see, observe, and experience, and I'm going to stand in my integrity. If the narcissist or when the narcissist can't go along with me on that, I see it, I get it, but I just can't be anything other than consistent with what I know is wisest and best. And in doing so, I hope that positions you to be a person of genuine peace.